What's one marketing tactic you believe is underrated?
I talk about this all the time, but I actually think that there is this concept called indirect marketing that I talk about in my book, which is
Mm,
go where everyone else isn't. I think that the new hot one is direct mail. And the reason I say
mm,
that is because people get so much email now that they actually spend about 2 seconds considering the email before they decide to trash it.
yeah.
But when they get mail, they actually spend an average of 30 seconds.
Oh,
So
wow.
you actually have more consideration time as they walk from the mailbox to the trash can than you do at a laptop when they just
Yeah.
press a button and click trash.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today, we're delighted to have David T. Scott on the program. Thanks for coming on, David. He has an impressive career spanning over 2 decades in marketing. Currently, the CEO of Evil Genius Games, which I'm sure we'll talk about. We overlapped at AWS, I think, 5, 7 years ago. He was a director of marketing there. He has lots of awards and accolades, like CMO of the Year. Well, that sounds cool. We want to talk about that. And has written a couple books. David, thanks for coming on.
Good. Happy to be here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Would love to get an intro from you for the audience.
Absolutely. My name is Dave Scott. I'm a four-time serial entrepreneur. This is my fourth startup. So I'll give you a bit about my background. So born and raised in Sacramento, California, and then went to school back east. I went to school to William and Mary to get a degree in computer science, and then got my MBA from Wharton. So enjoyed the East Coast tremendously. Enjoyed Wharton tremendously. And then did what every other Wharton graduate does. I actually went to Boston Consulting Group and did that for several years. Worked in the Washington office and then the San Francisco office, and then started my career sort of in big business. So went to work for AT&T as director of marketing there. Then became VP of marketing at Oracle. And then we got acquired, by PeopleSoft. And we got acquired by Oracle. And then I was like, this is horrible. You and I talked earlier about the Game of Thrones of some of these big companies, but Oracle is the gamiest. And then went to become a public company CMO. So I was CMO of a public company called Intermec Technologies,
Oh, wow.
where I ran a team of like 400 marketers worldwide. And was after 3 years, I was so tired of it. So tired of the politics, so tired of the large scale sort of like business oriented malaise that I decided to go into startups. And so
Nice.
ended up starting my first company and then got that sold and started my second one and so on and so forth. And then in between that, also had the opportunity to work for venture capital firms, to consult for them, to think about how those organizations can get their marketing going, and sort of turn into sort of like from 0 to 1 and then take it from 1 to 100. So that's been a lot of fun. And so I've sort of had a weird mishmatch between like bopping between startups and bopping between large companies like AWS. I was a head of marketing at Twitter, and other companies along those lines.
Wow. What a really cool and impressive background. And I actually live in Sac now, well, east of Sac in El Dorado Hills, which I'm sure you know where
Oh,
that
that's the
is.
fancy part of town. We were just talking about it today, because that's where the cool people live. Yeah, I grew up in Elk Grove, which
Oh,
is
yeah. Elk Grove is
back
nice.
back when I grew up there, it was Cowtown. It was even incorporated at that point in
Yeah.
time. And we used to be when we thought we were cool, we'd go to El Dorado Hills.
Yeah. So we're right on the lake here, Folsom Lake. It's really, really nice area. But
Beautiful.
everyone
Yeah.
stay away. It's terrible.
That's
No, we
right.
moved out. We moved out during COVID. My wife's like, "Hey, let's get a lake house. Go away on the weekends." I was like, "Hear me out. I think we'll just like move out of Silicon Valley and go live at a lake house somewhere."
I'll tell you, so
And
I was born and raised in Sacramento, and it's a great place to raise kids. It's a
yeah,
great place to grow up. If you can mind the heat, it's a small town feel, but it's got a
I
lot
love
of
the
really
heat.
great gyms. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. When it's 95 every day and you can have your window open all night, fresh air and stuff.
95 on a good day,
That's a good day.
110 on a bad day. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
problem.
You usually get about a week or two where it's like 105, 110. It's pretty unbearable.
I'll
Where
tell
do
you
you
a funny
live?
story. My
Yeah,
mother had a convertible. She was really proud of this convertible she bought, and it turned out it was too hot to drive it. So
yeah.
so there are certain days you just couldn't take the top down. So
No,
it was kind of a useless experience, I think.
yeah. Where's home now?
So I live in San Mateo, just
Okay, yeah,
outside the city, and yeah, we love it here. It's got the best of both worlds. It's an hour away from the city, but then also it's pure suburbia.
yeah. I used to live in Redwood Shores, so like right around the corner.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
I think we're following each other, Brian. It's crazy.
yeah. We've probably passed each other on
In
the
reverse.
101 many, many times. So walk us back through some of that awesome experience you have. Like, how did you get into marketing? When did you know you wanted to be in marketing, and how did that all originate?
Yeah, gosh, my experience is sort of a tale of two cities. So I've sort of had this sort of duality to my career where I've loved marketing, but I've also loved entrepreneurship. And so tried desperately to figure out sort of how to do both. My marketing journey is a bit of a strange one because I actually slept through my marketing classes at Wharton. In fact, I'm friends with one of my professors, a guy named Lynn Lodish. If anyone went to Wharton, you'll know Lynn. He's an amazing guy, and he taught brand marketing. And I used to sit in brand marketing like this, like this is the
Not
stupidest
enough.
thing on the
Yeah.
planet. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, it's so imprecise. It is so
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's all about, do you pick the right color for your brand? It's stupid. And so I used to tease him a lot and about how useless it was. And then
I'm laughing because I had the exact same experience when I got my business. I did a business undergrad and MBA like you. And I remember in marketing, and I ended up in marketing, like basically running demand gen, building MarTech tools. And I remember thinking, this is like over 20 years ago, this is a bunch of bullshit. Like I just sitting in my marketing class,
It's
like
hogwash.
this is all bullshit. But then marketing became a science, right? Marketing became measurable in our careers.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So what ended up happening was like I had a computer science degree, so I was very analytical anyway. And then I ended up getting a job as a director of strategy and business development at AT&T, and they're like, well, you have an MBA, so you must know marketing, so we'll just throw marketing underneath you. And I'm like, Lord. So I
little did they know you took like one marketing class.
I took like one marketing class. So what's funny is I pulled out my old textbook, which is The Fundamentals of Marketing by Philip Kotler. I don't know if you remember that book.
I know that book.
Everyone's read that book, right? The 4 Ps.
The 4 Ps. Yeah.
And read it from cover to cover. And I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to go. I can do marketing. But what happened was that over the time period, probably you and I were sort of in the same ecosphere at the time. Google AdWords came out and DoubleClick and some of the other technologies, and all of a sudden now you're like, hold on a minute, like all the impreciseness of marketing, right?
Yeah.
CPM. So everyone knows that CPM means cost per thousand or cost per million.
Yeah.
That was because when you drove past a billboard, they had no idea how many people were looking up at the billboard. And so they can go, well, we could price it within 1,000, give or take.
Yeah.
And that's how that CPM sort of came about, right? Super imprecise. Now, DoubleClick comes along / Google, because Google bought DoubleClick. They said, no, listen, we'll pay you, we'll charge you per click. And now all of a sudden, we not only know that the person is paying attention and engaged with your ad, but we can actually measure it. And that completely changed the game for me. And guys like me with a computer science degree had an opportunity to geek out into marketing. And so to this day, I call myself a direct marketer or a data-driven marketer or something like that.
Yeah. And then what drove that decision-making process to get an MBA? At what point? So you did BCG after your MBA?
Yeah, so I did computer science undergrad. I worked as a software developer for 4 years, working for General Electric, and then I went to my business school, and then that's when I took my Lynn Lodish class as an MBA.
So what kind of inspired that transition, from these corporate roles to founding your first couple startups?
Yeah, it's interesting because I love the idea of being able to make really, really powerful, large decisions that sort of sway large markets. And so I really enjoyed my time at AT&T. When I first joined AT&T, we were only doing about $100,000 of data. And then when I left, we were doing $2 billion of data. I really loved my time at PeopleSoft. We were doing really interesting things there with software as a service, ERP, HRIS systems, if you remember those buzzwords. Yeah. I really loved my job at Intermec Technologies because we were doing RFID when RFID was really big. But, the game changes, right? And you probably know this, like the larger the company, the smaller your slice of that you get to do. Right. So it's not, It's like, no, I'm not a marketing manager. I'm a social media marketing manager. Or no. Yeah. I'm an events marketing manager. Or no. I'm, And so what happens is that you don't get to do a lot of stuff. So you're really kind of pigeonholed. And then what you find out is that the more senior you are, the more it's about management of people and less about practicing the work itself. Right. And so I found myself losing touch with the practice of marketing. And it was more people. When I was at Amazon, I actually ran the budgeting process for Amazon Web Services marketing team.
Oh, wow.
And that was a 9-month exercise. So we would actually start it in March. We'd work our way all the way through sort of November, December. We'd ratify it with the board, and then we'd start all over again. And that was like 25% of my job, right? So not a lot of marketing, a lot of sort of like big company stuff.
Yeah, it's administrative tasks and playing politics and defending your team and like arguing with other managers of why somebody on your team needs a raise versus their, stuff like that.
Yes, that process too. But don't get me wrong, though. I actually loved my time at Amazon. It was
Oh,
probably
me
my
too.
favorite company of
Yeah.
all of them because I think of all the companies that kind of cut through the BS more than others did. Like it was a clear contrast between where my time at Oracle, for example. But as a big business, you got to get that stuff done. But what I really love about working at startups, and particularly my own startups, is the ability I can wake up every morning and go, what am I going to do to move this business forward? And I can roll up my sleeves and just do it. And I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun innovating that way.
Yeah. So walk us through what your current startup is and how you came up with that idea.
Yeah. So have you ever played a game called Dungeons and Dragons?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I haven't
Alrighty.
played it a lot, but I know of it. Yeah.
You know of it. Yeah. Probably everyone knows of it. About 150 million people play this game worldwide. It's part of a $30 billion tabletop gaming industry. Funny enough, tabletop gaming became popular again during COVID because people couldn't go to bars and restaurants, so they had to figure out other ways to hang out. The market now constitutes a $30 billion market. It's actually larger than the U.S. theatrical film release market. It's growing faster than the video game market. And I think part of it is, I think like the millennials and the Gen Zs have started to move away from screen time. And I think they're really more towards personal connection.
They kind of grew up inundated with screen time. It's just all pervasive all around them. And so they're looking for ways to like not be in front of screens. Right.
I think you're right. Yeah. And there's this sort of interesting counterculture where they sort of moved away from it, whereas the millennials really kind of grew up with it. And so what's happening is that they're finding these ways for personal connection, and board games are becoming the new poker night. And so extremely popular with Gen Zs, very popular with my generation, which sort of grew up with them before the video game era. And so what happened was that, COVID came around and then everyone couldn't play board games together anymore. So we all tried to figure out ways to create technology to be able to facilitate the experience. So what we do is we create role-playing games based on famous movie IPs like Rambo and Pacific Rim and Conquest of Skull Island. And then we provide ways for people to play those games online and in person using cutting edge tools. So that's kind of what we're focused on.
So it's virtual themed board games based on pop culture references like movies and things like that.
Yeah, officially licensed actually. So, if you want to get a bunch of buddies together and play a Pacific Rim adventure, you can do that, using our game content, doing it on our platform, for example, if you wanted to. And it's a lot of fun. We work really closely with Legendary, which is was the studio that owns the Kong vs. Skull Island, Pacific Rim, and Dune franchises. And we get to actually build canon for these stories.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
And so the relationship here is like you're going out to the media rights holder, the copyright holders, and saying, "Hey, I'm going to license this and give you kind of a rev share." Is that basically how it works?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so what's interesting about it is that we didn't realize we were solving this massive pain point for movie studios. Movie studios are going through this really interesting sort of transformation where they're trying to figure out how to connect with their audience better. And so imagine yourself, your Legendary Studios, and 4 years ago you did Kong versus Godzilla 1, and it's 4 years between movie 1 and movie 2.
Yeah.
So what do you do to engage your audience between those two movies? And so we kind of come in and go, hey, listen, we could fill it up for you, right? Like, yes, you can do a AAA video game, but that's time consuming. Yes, you can do another
bigger
TV
production
show,
in some
that's
cases than producing the movie. I mean, some of these AAA video games, yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah. And it takes time, right? So maybe you'll do a graphic novel, maybe you'll do a novelization of it, but why not do a set of games, really quick games that provide 80 to 100 hours of gameplay, really further the story along, and provide a lot of enjoyment for that core customer. So we think of ourselves as being able to connect the movie studios to their fans and really helping solidify and build that community.
That's really fun. And so it kind of operates and behaves like a virtual Dungeons and Dragons kind of game where it's kind of an RPG, or are there kind of different genres that you kind of align to the different kinds of media material? Like Rambo, would that have a Dungeons and Dragons where I'm rolling the dice and like maybe if I roll, a certain number, I don't know.
Yeah,
a full clip of my AK-47 or something. Like, how does that work?
There you go. Yeah. So listen, Dungeons and Dragons is 50 years old. It was invented by this amazing guy named Gary Gygax back in the 1970s in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, it was so cold they couldn't do anything else other than stay at home and play these kind of games, right?
Yeah.
And it blew up. And if you take a look at Dungeons and Dragons, it's all based on essentially collective storytelling. You and I getting together, making up characters, fighting adversaries, and having a good time. Improv. But Dungeons and Dragons is based on essentially European fantasy. It's based on J.R.R. Tolkien, which is great because it's a great genre, but it also is alienating to certain people. So other genres have propped up, right? Science fiction. Star Wars has their own game. Star Trek has its own game. And then what we call modern, which is the genre that we play in, which is sort of like you and I being able to reimagine our favorite blockbuster movies, Bad Boys or Fast and Furious or John Wick. And so basically we've built a core gaming system that allows you to be able to do that level of storytelling for those types of games.
And then, so this is a traditional kind of software startup. So you would actually go out, raise money for this, and then go get the titles, produce the game. But it's kind of almost like a studio model in a way. It's kind of not quite a software startup, but not quite a game release. It's something in between that.
Yeah,
like software-enabled media or something.
That's right. Yeah, we're a little bit this weird hybrid, right? Because we're actually more of a gaming infrastructure. What we're going to become is more of a gaming infrastructure than necessarily anything else, and this is the reason why, right? So
you see yourselves being like the kind of the Unity or Unreal Engine of this genre.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
So we really admire Roblox, and we have a number of investors from there, and a couple of employees and stuff like that. And so what Roblox
and they're in San Mateo, right? I mean, that's their home office.
I can walk to the office.
Right.
So what they did is they created a no code capability for people to build their own adventures. Low code ability to build their own adventures on a platform, and you can take that, you can build it, you can make it available to other people to play. And I think that's ultimately where we're going to get as well, which is that we created this core game called Everyday Heroes. It has its own core mechanics, and we're automating that process. We're putting it on a platform. And what we're saying is two things, right? You as a player can subscribe to our platform, and by doing that, you can play our games. But not only that, but we're also going to encourage our other publishers to go ahead and write on our platform so that they can offer their games on our system as well. It's all still the same core mechanic, which is the Everyday Heroes mechanic. But on top of it, the adventures might be different. So one adventure, you might be hopping into a Jaeger in a Pacific Rim, in the Pacific Rim themed game. One is you might be traipsing through the jungles of Honduras in a Rambo themed game. But, Brian, you and I can create our own world, our own storyline, and then we could actually offer that to the players as well and let people enjoy that experience
Team Ignite.
too.
The adventure.
Yes. Team Ignite, the adventure. Yes.
We should do that. Exactly. We should make a startup investing one or an angel investing game.
I think that would be amazing, actually.
You roll the dice. I mean, that's basically what I do as a VC is I'm just rolling the dice.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's like all right, you get a +5 if this person's a serial entrepreneur, to your dice. You get a -2 if they're the 25th artificial intelligence company you invested in this
right. Yeah, that's funny. No, I think we could probably make something like that, like a Dungeons and Dragons-esque startup investing game or something. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I was just talking to a guy who runs angel investing cohorts up in Seattle, and he does it virtually around the world, and he just runs these, basically like an angel university. I wonder if you could do the same thing. Like one game I tried back in the day was Rich Dad Poor Dad's, Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant game. You ever played that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to teach you about different kinds of investing and cash flows and stuff. A little better than Monopoly, a little bit more realistic,
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. And, Brian, if you want to do this, I say we create a board game, we put it up on Kickstarter, and let's do it for real.
Right.
But we actually, one of the funny things we have is we have classes. So in Dungeons and Dragons, you've got classes like a fighter or a wizard. In our game, we have classes like an MMA fighter or a martial artist. Yeah. We actually created one called a billionaire. And they have really, really fun mechanics that go with it that are absolutely hilarious that go along with it, because our game's a lot of fun to play. So definitely doable.
That'd be fun. So why you? Why this? Why now? Like, I think listeners probably at this point have to be thinking like, he's a Wharton MBA. He's been a marketing exec at Twitter and Amazon. I mean, pretty impressive stuff, right? You could have just kind of kept, punching the clock, making a bunch of money in big tech. And here you are working on a very interesting startup that's kind of like a, amalgamation of many different kinds of things. Like, yeah, what is that story there?
Yeah, it's a little funny because I get the same question from VCs, and either you see the vision or you don't. And so what's funny about it is if you take a look at my career, it's mostly B2B marketing, right? I mean, I've worked for Twitter, of course, and AT&T, but you got your Oracles in there, you've got your Amazon Web Services in there. And if you take a look at my expertise, all the awards that I won, my book back there, it's all B2B marketing. So you kind of scratch your head and go, how is he into games right now? And I think there comes a time in your career where you decide that you want to do what really gets you excited and gets you up in the morning versus stuff you can do. And I think while I loved working and consulting for all these amazing B2B companies, I just never was able to bring the passion that I bring to my hobby. And my hobby is this tabletop board gaming industry. So the way the company got started was a little bit of a weird scenario. So I was actually at Amazon on 4th and Olive, and I was in the cafeteria, and I run into a guy named Jeff Grubb. Jeff Grubb is, from my perspective, one of the modern fathers of Dungeons and Dragons. So he created a game called D20 Modern with 4 other amazing designers. He was one of the original game designers for the game back in the 1970s. And he was working at Amazon in the Amazon Gaming.
Oh.
And because I'm a nerd and I love this industry, I recognized him and I said, Jeff Grubb, I'm a big fan, and asked him if he'd want to go and hang out and I could buy him a beer. And he said, I'll never turn out a beer. So we sat down, kind of fanboying, sitting down with him and chatting about all the stuff that he had worked on in the past. And 20 years ago, he worked on a game called D20 Modern, which was exactly my game. So basically, it was taking the D&D engine and it was putting it into a modern day world. And so I got for an hour to talk about all the things that he learned from that experience, what he liked, what he disliked. And then about halfway through, I'm like, we should relaunch this game. The game's 20 years old. We should relaunch it. And his answer was hell no. And then a few beers later, it was like no. And then a few beers later, it was like a maybe. And then ultimately, I twisted his arm and we started the company. But it was just a really beautiful match made in heaven. Finding him serendipitously at Amazon. And so far, we've done really well. The company's done $1.7 million in revenue since our launch. We did $650,000 in a Kickstarter before we ever got started with the project. And so we've got, thousands of people all over the country and all over the world that play our game on a regular basis.
That's really cool. And so that relaunch of that game served as the foundation, kind of this Roblox platform model of building all the other licensed content.
It was, yeah, it was 100% the foundation. And we were lucky enough to bring Jeff Grubb back, a guy named Stan, Michelle Slavicic, and several other really amazing people that worked on the original project. 20 years ago, we had them come back for this project. And so we had sort of a new versus old, new and old that brought together for this next generation of modern platforming, modern RPG platforms.
And then, so the business model here is, it's software enabled, right? So you're selling basically copies of a game. Is it like on Steam? Is it something I would go find in Steam in that kind of category of games, or like where is it distributed, or is it mobile or?
Yeah, so we started out a little bit differently, and then this is kind of what scares people, but what excites me about the business. We knew that we needed to be able to create some credibility by creating a really, really good tabletop role-playing game. So we started old school. We actually built and printed up a physical game. And that's the original thing we sold.
Yeah.
And did really well. We sold 35,000 copies in the first year. We're almost sold out of the whole inventory there. But now over the last year, what we've been working on is transitioning all that experience into a digital experience. So you don't have to necessarily buy or carry the game, which, by the way, costs around $60 to buy the game, and then the supplements cost around $25. So you can find yourself spending $80 plus dollars per unit that you buy. But the model that I like is more of a B2B SaaS-based model. It's actually $4.99 a month, and you get everything that we offer. And so when we actually change the game, when we actually add more mods, when we add more content, it doesn't matter. For $4.99, you get access to all of it. And I think that's kind of where we're seeing a lot of our competitors go in this space. And then that's also sort of where I think we're going to go. And what I like about it is we tried this out, and we have beta users. We have a couple thousand beta users trying it out on this sort of model. And now I'm home, right? Because I started out as a B2B SaaS marketer, and now I'm seeing some of the same economics, right? So I'm saying I'm measuring my D1, D7, D30 retention rates. And they're looking really good. I'm seeing an average session time of 100 minutes per session, which is looking really good. I'm seeing an average number of sessions of 3.2 per week. And so now all of a sudden I can take a look at this and go, hold on a minute. Irrespective of the fact that this is a game, these engagement numbers are really through the roof,
Yeah.
really, really compelling. And just, and so that's what I'm hanging my hat on is how strong the engagement numbers are.
Yeah. And then do you also layer in like a rev share, and how does this like compare to how Unity and Unreal make money from their platform, or
Yeah.
Roblox for that
So
matter? Yeah.
Yeah, so right now we're building all of our own content on top of our infrastructure, and then we do a rev share with the movie studios. Of course, they get their share for the content that we do there. But believe it or not, over 50% of our customers they prefer just to use our content, so our generic sort of everyday heroes content, which is sort of fashioned after the TV show The A-Team,
Mm.
if you remember that show.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, so it's just pure for us. And then once we start getting third parties on, we'll just do a rev share with the third parties as well. So the content providers can then provide their content on our platform, publish it on our platform, and then we'll just take a share of that, and they'll get the majority of that money.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because everybody ends up going B2B SaaS, it feels like eventually. And I've had lots of founders who start B2C and then eventually they realize, hey, there's a better opportunity over here in B2B. And I feel like everybody kind of goes towards that. And that's kind of where the center of gravity is. It's really hard, like, to make money at the consumer level as a consumer marketplace like Roblox. It's so unusual. Like, we know everybody who's done it, but there's lots of B2B companies that are worth billions of dollars that you've never heard of that are just running all these games as, and in the platform layer, right? I think that is a viable strategy. How big is that market? So if you're charging everybody who's making games $500 a month, is it a big enough market? I mean, you said it's a $30 billion market for tabletop games, but this is like more like software based, right? So
Yeah,
maybe
well,
it kind of grows the market a bit.
well, I think don't get me wrong. I think we're still going to be more B2C, but it's going to look more like the B2B model. And so what that means is that we won't charge our creators to create, but we'll take a revenue share of whatever they produce off the marketplace. So a little bit different, but I agree with you though. I think that if I could figure out a way to turn this into a B2B model, it'd be safer.
Yeah.
Partly because so listen, we spent a year selling the product unit by unit, and what I realized was every single dollar that we bought was a hard fight.
Mm.
Right? You had a customer acquisition cost. You had to measure that against the average sales price. You had to come up with a ROAS. If your ROAS was below 2, you were doing poorly. If your ROAS was above 2, you were doing well. And just because a customer bought your first product doesn't necessarily mean they buy your second product. It means that you got to fight for the dollars for your second product too. What I like about a SaaS-based model, or what we call game as a service, is that I can predict the revenue, and which means that I can determine how much money I'm going to spend in R&D. I can figure out when I'm going to break even as a company. I know where to invest in order to twist the needle. And so I like that predictability, which is why I like the monthly subscription. I don't mind taking less money per month in order to be able to have that predictability.
Yeah, makes sense. So what's your vision for where this goes in the next, 10 years? Like, you look back 10, 15 years from now and this was a big success. Like, what did you build and accomplish?
Yeah, so we have large competitors out there, Dungeons and Dragons, for example, which has a game as a service business like ours, and they already have 15 million subscribers on it, right? So they're doing really well, growing. They're growing very, very quickly. I can see us being a fast follower there. I'd love to create an end-to-end solution where anyone can come onto our system, not necessarily even knowing how to play one of these types of games, to go ahead and build up a character, pick up a game right away, and play it. And maybe today it looks like a multiplayer game, but maybe tomorrow it's AR, and maybe the day after it's VR. Can you imagine hopping into a VR headset and all of a sudden you're immersed within the actual dungeon that you're crawling? I think that'd be a lot of fun. So I think there's some opportunity to use some of these new technologies to create more of an immersive experience that's really going to really reward you as a player.
It's really cool. Well, why don't we switch to a rapid fire? What is your biggest career influence?
My biggest career influence. It's funny. I got very lucky when I worked at GE. I actually went through one of their management training programs, and
World
at the end of
famous.
world famous,
Yeah.
and got very lucky. Had great rotation throughout the process, and then I got invited to work for Jack Welch as one of his personal assistants for a year. And I was one of 4 kids essentially that he brought on, and it was a
Young
really
20-somethings.
eye-opening. Yeah, 20-somethings. Yeah, knew it all. It was a great experience, and he was a brilliant leader. And so Jack Welch, just as you know, probably one of the most prolific, most well-known, well-regarded CEOs of the time. Obviously, at that time, GE was doing really well. And he was just a brilliant leader. Like when you watched him work, holy cow, absolutely brilliant. And
Yeah.
one thing he kind of taught me is that he knew his numbers cold. And so having a good finance background, understanding your budgets, understanding your cash flow, understanding that kind of stuff was really, really key. And
Mm.
I think that holds really well today. And the number
Yeah.
two is knowing your customer really well. Which we talk a lot about in the startup space, right? More product market fit, and really sort of, things like jobs to be done and some other practices that are out there.
Yeah, I love that. What's one marketing tactic you believe is underrated?
I talk about this all the time, but I actually think that there is this concept called indirect marketing that I talk about in my book, which is
Mm.
go where everyone else isn't. So, I think that the new hot one is direct mail. And the reason I say
Mm.
that is because people get so much email now that they actually spend about 2 seconds considering the email before they decide to trash it.
Yeah.
But when they get mail, they actually spend an average of 30 seconds.
Oh,
So
wow.
you actually have more consideration time as they walk from the mailbox to the trash can than you do at an actual laptop when they just
Yeah.
press a button and click trash.
Wow.
So
Yeah, unexpected answer. I love that.
yeah.
What was your favorite game growing up?
So once upon a time, I was ranked 8th in the country at Risk.
What?
So I was nationally ranked at the game of Risk. Yeah, my brother, who's 5 years older than me, had a friend who competed nationally, taught me his tricks, and so I was.
Explain what Risk is for people who don't know, and then like what's a strategy that beginners could use effectively to win.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know, Risk is a board game of world domination that was designed, launched by Milton Bradley 40 years ago. And basically, it's a map of the country.
It's only
map
40
of the
years
world.
old? It's like from the 80s?
Yeah,
Wow.
maybe 50 now, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
like early 80s,
I grew
late
up playing
70s.
it.
Maybe.
I wasn't nationally ranked, but yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the way it works is it's a map of the world, and your whole job is you start in certain countries and you build up your armies and you try to take over everyone else's territory.
Kind of like a 4X game, almost like Civilization. If you played that game, that's one of my favorite PC games.
Yeah. Mine too. Civ 6 is amazing.
Yeah.
So a little bit. I mean, I think Civ 6 is amazing. Or Civilization's amazing because you have the whole tech tree stuff thing, and you also have different ways to win, right? So you can win by hegemony.
Risk is just one way. It's just like pure military domination. It's like taking like Civilization, and the only way you can win is military victory.
Yeah. But what's funny is so part of it is controlling your borders, right? And so one of the rookie moves is people amass a gigantic army and start rampaging through Europe or what have you. And then by the time they're done with the rampage, they've
stretched out. Yeah.
They've stretched out too much. Yeah, they've worn their armies a little too thin, and then now someone can just sweep up and take. It's kind of like what Ukraine is doing in Russia right now, right? Where they've amassed all these armies, then now they've invaded the eastern Ukraine, and so now Ukraine can just kind of sweep through Russia, which is essentially undefended.
Right. Yeah, because they've had to amass this contingent down here to kind of hold this territory.
Exactly.
But now they're just undefended up here. So exactly. Like, great, we'll just send drones in there and start blowing up your infrastructure.
Yeah, so that's my one piece of advice is don't overextend.
Wow, that is a really cool answer. What is the best book you've read this year?
Oh, wow. Oh, interesting. So listen, I have so I may get called out for this, but I have a 7-year-old, and I made the decision to read him Animal Farm.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By George Orwell.
It's multi-layered, right? Because if you read it as a 7-year-old, I think you would just be like, yeah, it's a bunch of, animals like trying to get along on a farm. But like there's this whole political intrigue layer to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And then we talk a lot about like deep fakes nowadays and sort of like, but we used to call deep fakes propaganda. And so it's really interesting sort of how the pigs in the spoiler alert, how the pigs in the book use propaganda to sort of manipulate the masses. It's really a fun read.
I have a 7-year-old. Maybe I'll try to read it to her. It's my youngest. That's pretty interesting, especially because she's starting to get exposed to Netflix and YouTube at too young of an age, and I'm trying to clamp that down because there's so many screens around the house, but some self-reflection on that stuff I think would be interesting. If you could give yourself one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh, geez. Let's see here. Just one?
Like a telegraph time machine. You can send like an email message to yourself 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, it would be really, really take work-life balance seriously. I kind of feel like in my early days, I spent a lot of time working and trying to achieve certain things. And then when I achieved them, I came back and sort of were like, okay, well, that wasn't really that gratifying, right?
Yeah.
And the people I tend to admire now are people who really didn't necessarily weren't as aggressive as most other people were. So the people I admire now really had a strong work life balance, married their high school sweetheart, raised kids, had a fulfilling life in addition to the work that they had. So work didn't define them. So
Yeah.
if I were
Yeah.
to do it
I
again,
think I suffered from that too. Like I grew up poor and worked really freaking hard to get to Wall Street. And, I let my job define me for too long. And I just
mhm,
kept kind of looking for fulfillment in my job. And it's never going to come until like you like do what you're doing now, which is you marry who you are and what you're passionate about to what you do on a daily basis. And, for me, it was always that like $10 million question. If I won the lottery or whatever, what would I do the next day? And whoever's listening to this podcast, if you're a regular listener, you've probably heard me say this dozens of times at this point, but and it wasn't Wall Street and it wasn't Microsoft and wasn't Amazon and it wasn't any of those big tech jobs. And like doing what you're doing, which is like combining this passion that you have, this background, nationally ranked in risk to create a startup around that. The world needs more people like you to be like, you know what? I'm not going to just make a 7-figure tech exec role, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to go create something that I want to see in the world. Right. And that's what makes startups and entrepreneurship so cool. And that's why being a VC, frankly, is the best job for me, because I get to meet all kinds of people like you creating all this value in the world. And I just kind of get to live vicariously and, talk to them on my podcast and stuff. So,
yeah, and I gotta say, like, it's really neat to see my son admire what I'm doing, and for him to model it, and like, so every
yeah.
once in a while, like, Dad, I invented a board game, like, let's publish it, and he'll come up with his own board game, his own board game idea, but he now can see how it is to start a company and be his own boss and take care of the American dream and just all the stuff that I want him to grow up to know, and that's really gratifying for me.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my kids also followed my footsteps and they play a ton of video games. So, um, yeah, probably not the best influence, as evident by all of like my gaming stuff in the background here. What's your go-to productivity tool?
So I'm a Superhuman fan. So for those of you who don't know,
I tried to get into that. I couldn't get into it.
I know.
What is
That's the
that?
whole point. So
Yeah.
for those who don't know, Superhuman is a layer, an email layer, a layer that sits on your email system. So it can sit on Microsoft Outlook, it can sit on Google, and the power behind it is mapped a bunch of keystrokes
Yeah.
to it, almost like old
But
school, like
I got the
Word.
shortcuts on Gmail. I mean, press R to reply, or I can archive with, whatever that button is. I forget.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah. So
E. I think E is archive. Like
yeah, yeah.
I don't.
It's very similar to that, but you can do really cool stuff. I
Yeah.
can set a reminder. I can have it show back in my inbox in an hour, in a day, in a week.
I mean, Gmail does
Uh,
that. You can snooze
I
stuff
can
for an hour a day a week.
Yeah, so it's all done off of keystrokes. I can
That's on
search off
keystrokes.
keystrokes. I can
Yeah.
fire off keystrokes. I can insert things off keystrokes. And the problem now is I've memorized all the keystrokes, so now I can't not use it. So they've
Yeah.
kind of trapped me
Yeah.
now for life.
I've been using an app called TextBlaze. It's a Chrome extension. And as a VC, my job is to basically reply with the same 50 replies over and over again.
Which is no thank you. We'll have to cheer for
too
the
early for
sidelines.
us, not a fit for our thesis. Stay in touch. Like, hey, thanks for the intro. Like, let's find some time here. It's all the same. It's like 50 things that I say over and over again. And so I have keystrokes in TextBlaze, which is it's like a slash and 2 letters. And so like I think in slash 2-letter combos for like everything that I need to say. And I couldn't live without it now. So shout out to that productivity tool. What's one technology you believe will disrupt marketing in the next decade?
Well, I mean, everyone's talking about Gen AI, and marketing is sort of the one area that's embraced it the most. I think that, when you're programming 30 social media posts, you get pretty bored.
Yeah.
So being able to use Gen AI to sort of help you program it, that'd be great. One
We
of
do
the
it for
things
this podcast. We use Gen AI for all the clips, right? For me to
great.
go watch an hour-long episode and create 20 clips would take me an hour or two. And I could do it with like just a few clicks. And, I got to edit it a little bit. And, but, if you see any of our clips, that's from an AI generated, they just scan the episode and find the best clips of the episode.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, what's it called?
Opus.
Okay.
Yeah, Opus AI, very cool little product. Saves me a ton of time, and actually saves my social media manager a ton of time because I don't even do that anymore. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm a firm believer in as a marketer is content is king, right? So once you actually have a lot of content out there, you can do a lot with it, right? You can turn
yeah,
it into an ad, you can turn it into a white paper, you can turn it into a case study, you can turn it into a deck, you can turn it into a social media post. And so as a result, you got to be a prolific writer, right? And so if you're not a
yeah,
strong writer, the fact that you can use AI to at least get your first draft out, and then
which
pass it
I've
over
done
to an
for almost
editor.
every blog post I've ever written. The first
Right.
draft was AI for sure.
Yeah, why not? Right?
Yeah,
Hey, listen, read this article and then help me write, 10 ideas
exactly.
for, or
Yeah,
what have you. But I mean, it actually gets it right more than it doesn't. And so it's a real game changer for people who need to create a marketing, content first marketing program. So
yeah,
big fan.
yeah. Does marketing ruin everything?
No, not at all. What's funny about it is I actually believe that marketing is all really about getting to the truth, and it's specifically getting to your truth, right? And so I'm actually kind of bummed out that people are anti-cookie and stuff like that because
Yeah,
my whole theory is that great, it's going to give me a better, more relevant ad, so,
too. And
so I
I
don't have
can't.
to
I
listen
worked
to
in ad
that.
tech, so I'm kind of biased. But
Yeah,
why wouldn't you want targeted ads? Why
yeah,
wouldn't you
it's
want the advertisers to know like stuff about you
what
so
you
they can show
want.
you better ads? Yeah,
Yeah. Otherwise, you're
so
still going to get ads
obvious.
anyway, but they're all going to be bad ads,
Yeah,
and then you're going to be
it'll
frustrated.
be all penis enlargement pills and
Wegovy and all the other
yeah,
things that they
exactly.
think you
Yeah,
need.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of sort of intelligent marketing, and really, it's all about putting the right product in front of the right person at the right time.
yeah. Well, this was a really great conversation. There's so much else we glossed over. We could have talked about. We could have talked to you for like another couple hours about marketing. Thanks so much for coming on. Where can people find out more about Evil Genius Games and get in touch with you?
Yeah, just as it says, evilgeniusgames.com.
Love it. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thanks a lot, Brian.